Pure Financial Advisors, a registered investment advisor. This show does not intend to provide personalized investment advice through this broadcast and does not represent that the securities or services discussed are suitable for any investor. Investors are advised not to rely on any information contained in the broadcast in the process of making a full informed investment decision. This is Your Money, Your Wealth on Talk Radio 760 KFMB. Now, here's Joe Anderson and Big Al Clopine.
Hey, it's a little bit after the hour. Good morning, everyone. Show's called Your Money, Your Wealth. My name's Joe Anderson, certified financial planner with Alan Clopine. He's a CPA. Thanks for tuning in. Check us out on iTunes, Your Money, Your Wealth there. Go to purefinancial.com. You can get us there. Go to yourmoneyyourwealth.com. You can get us there. 3 solid places.
Pretty good, huh?
That's pretty good. A lot of things to discuss today.
What do you got?
Not much.
Okay.
We can talk about the markets. We can talk about taxes. We can talk about healthcare. We have a Medicare webinar coming up next week, Tuesday. We got Dr. Katy Votava. Yes. She'll be coming on board just momentarily, diving into the ABCs of Medicare. And so there's a ton to know.
There is a ton, and it's a lot more, seems like it's a lot more complicated than it should be.
Well, isn't that everything?
Seems to be.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, Medicare. Then you hit 65, and there you go. You're signed up. Nope.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
That's right.
So, yeah, we'll kind of give a tease with Dr. Katy about the webinar. And all you got to do is sign up. You can go to purefinancial.com to sign up for this Medicare webinar. If you are, I would say 61 to, if you haven't signed up yet, from 61 to 65, if you haven't signed up, I guess. You want to learn.
Should be listening.
You should be listening.
Right.
Because when you turn age 62, 63, that's the income that you make is going to determine what your Medicare premiums are. And there's some crazy calculations. And then 2018, Medicare premiums are going to go up. And so there's a lot of different things that you want to learn. So you could sign up for the webinar. You don't necessarily have to listen to it live. As long as you sign up, then you'll get a or like the replay. Yeah. Is that what it's called? A link for the replay. And here's what we're going to do, because it's going to be probably an hour plus, because there's a lot of stuff that we're going to get into. And then I'm going to chop it up.
Oh, into pieces.
Bite-sized pieces, so that you can just handle it, just little bite sizes at a time.
Right.
Because if you're like me, sitting there for an hour, it's too much.
Listening about Medicare?
Yeah, it could be a little rough.
It could be.
Right?
It could be.
So,
in fact, I'll say it probably will be.
It very well could be. So, and we do a ton of videos, right? And I think the average viewer, watches it for maybe 7 to 10 minutes.
Right.
So that's what I'm going to try to do. Just give it 10, 15-minute bite-sized pieces.
Okay, I like it.
So go to purefinancial.com to register for the webinar coming up Tuesday. It's going to be Tuesday. So, what else do you got?
I got all kinds of stuff.
Oh, great.
Kind of smorgasbord. I got, first thing I want to go over is, Joe, did you know that if you save more, you live longer? This is from a recent New York Times article. A study by the Brookings Institute said that richer people live longer.
Yeah, no, I did hear that.
Yeah.
Is that if you are, that's common sense in a sense, because you have more money, you could probably afford better health care.
Yeah, that's certainly part of it. But here's the current stats. Of a man born in 1950, life expectancy is age 73 if you're in the poorest 10% of wealth, but it's 87 if you're in the richest 10%, right? That's quite a difference.
Well, what's the richest?
Richest 10% of the people. So you take all the people in the country and
Yeah, I know, but here's me sitting listening to you thinking, all right, well, what number do I have to be at?
Oh, no idea. I don't have that in front of me. Yes.
So what, do I need $1 billion?
No.
Or do I need $100,000?
You probably, I'm guessing you probably need to be a millionaire, but I don't know.
This show's going out with a bang.
Women born in 1950. Life expectancy is 75 if they're in the poorest 10%, or 88 if they're in the richest 10%. And get this, while women still have a longer life expectancy, the gap has narrowed, especially for wealthier men, right? And so they're thinking this, Joe. They're thinking that increase in life expectancy among the wealthy is due to the fact, in part, because they're more educated, which tends to lead to less use of tobacco. Another thing is obesity has increased less rapidly for the wealthy, and certainly, as you mentioned, medical advances are more readily available when you have money. But here's another theory, that those that have money have a more fulfilling retirement. They're happier. And it's been shown if you're happier, you'll probably live longer.
But money isn't.
Money does not cause happiness, but it can allow you to do the things and to achieve some of the dreams and goals that you've had. That can lead to happiness. Money in and of itself is not going to lead to happiness. So that's my viewpoint by Alan Clopine.
I like it. Keep going.
So, you know what? The advice from this article?
Yeah. Save
more.
Yes.
Save more so you can live longer.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. You knew that was coming.
That's the best. Any article that you ever read, that's the advice.
It doesn't really matter what it's about. The solution is save more.
Save more.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So
how do you do that?
Yeah, let's go in a time capsule.
Let's go backwards.
Let's go backwards.
I should have saved more.
Oh.
But I guess the thing, and we say this all the time, but it bears repeating, is it doesn't really matter where you're at. You can improve your situation by saving more starting today, right?
Well, yes. I mean, it's never too late to start, right? But then you and I, Alan, know individuals that have millions that are going to blow through those millions.
Of course, yeah.
And
not have a very happy life.
Exactly.
We do know that.
And we know people that a very modest means are the happiest people that come into our office.
I would agree with that too.
So it's, I think it's finding purpose in a sense. It's just, why am I keep on saying in a sense? It's finding purpose to figure out exactly what you want to do in your retirement.
Right.
It's saying, all right, well, here, this is what I want to do. Here's the game plan. And this show's all about wealth and finances.
Right.
But you have to plan to get the wealth and the finances. And I just heard something too. Most people are so afraid of running out of money. And then they did a statistic. It was like, all right, well, how many of you have a financial plan? And 78% of them didn't have a financial plan. But you're freaking out because you don't want to run out of money, but you don't necessarily have a plan to do it.
Yeah, you got your head in the sand, and that's why you're freaking out. And in some cases, Joe, I think people are afraid. It's like going to the doctor because you might be sick and you don't even know it.
Right. Yeah. I had that phobia.
You're over that now?
Oh, yeah. I go once a year.
Okay,
Get
good for
blood.
you. Good for you.
Yeah, it's good times.
Yeah.
But there's a couple of different things. I want to get into different expenses that could really hurt your lifestyle that you might not know it. And then we'll talk about some different ways to protect yourself, just to kind of give you a tease here. Healthcare is one of them. And so that's why we got Dr. Katy on. A lot of you are probably overspending or will overspend for your Medicare coverage and healthcare coverage. So we want to talk to her to figure out what is the solution there to make sure that you get a little bit more money into your pocket. Housing and lifestyle expenses. You look at the rising cost of just like long-term care. I'm not talking Medicare health insurance, just long-term care expenses. And then you take a look at maybe potential caring for your parents or your spouse. And then, of course, the big one is taxes. So we'll spend some time again talking about taxes because, it's funny. Everything kind of rolls back in is that you have to take a look at a global look at your overall finances. And please don't look at each section of your financial life in a silo, where you're looking at your taxes only at tax time, you're looking at your investments, and then you're taking a look at your insurances, and then you'll take a look at your estate planning. Because everything that you basically do in your financial realm is going to affect another component of that. Because if you just look at your investments, well, investments create taxes, and if you're just looking at your taxes without your investments, you could be dropping the ball there. And then you look at, all right, well, how much money do I have? Do I have enough to provide me that lifestyle? If you don't, well, if you focus on taxes, potentially that can stretch out your income a little bit longer. So there's a lot more to this than just saying, hey, I'm 65, I'm going to retire, and then just start drawing dollars from your overall accounts. So that's what we want to get into today. Please go to our website at purefinancial.com to join us Tuesday. I think it starts at 10:30 to 11:30. Webinar with Dr. Katy Votava. Dr. Katy is, what is she again? The authority of Medicare?
Yeah, I think that's what we postulated a couple of weeks ago when we introduced this segment.
postulated?
Yeah.
You've been reading?
Yeah, I'm getting smarter as I'm getting older.
Damn. It's like postulated. I don't even know what that means.
Hey, I've got a word for you.
Yeah, what's that?
It's I have to find it. I can't remember.
Oh, this is going to be a good tease for the next segment. Hey, stick around. We're going to figure out what Big Word Big Al's got to say. We got to take a break. Don't go anywhere. Show's called Your Money or Wealth.
This is Your Money, Your Wealth on Talk Radio 760 KFMB.
Hey, welcome back to the show. Show's called Your Money or Wealth. Joey Anderson here, certified financial planner, alongside Big Al Clopine. He's a CPA. Hey, Alan, let's take a step back in time to the year 1990.
Okay, not too long ago.
It was, just over 25 years ago.
Correct.
The cost of a gallon of gas, $1.34.
Wow, really?
The average price of a car, $17,000.
Okay.
The average price of a home, $123,000.
Not in Southern California. I'll tell you that.
Average.
Yes.
Times have changed a little bit, huh? Today, you know how much it costs to fill your tank? I just filled my tank. It was over $50.
Me too. Yep.
You know how much it costs for health insurance? I mean, just look at Medicare premiums are jumping up. I mean, people are paying anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 a year just in Medicare premiums. And then you take a look at co-pays and everything else. What the statistics when it comes to Fidelity, what a married couple is going to spend over, $200,000 to $300,000 just in out-of-pocket expenses just for health care?
Correct.
And you know how much it costs for electricity, food, and home insurance and everything else. But what will those things cost in about 20 or 25, maybe even 30 years from now? There's no way to really know for sure. Some expenses could double, triple, or even quadruple compared to where they are today. Elle and I have a client that retired about 20 years ago, had about a $60,000 pension. $60,000 was a ton of money 20 years ago. Guess what? He's paying about $3,400 a month in prescription drugs, right? So you have to take a look at, all right, well, yeah, you think things okay now, but you have to look in the future. And those kind of increases of expenses could cripple your lifestyle in retirement. We see 5 different expenses on the horizon that can threaten your lifestyle in retirement, and that could dramatically impact anyone who's thinking about retiring over the next 5 years. So what do you think those 5 expenses are, Alan?
Well, I think we got to probably start with healthcare.
Healthcare would be good because we're living a lot longer, which is really good, right?
Yes.
And so I've heard, with this exponential technology and everything else, is that people, well, I guess what our parents or grandparents, well, my grandparents anyway, they retired at 65, and my grandmother lived actually until 92. My grandfather died at probably 80, right? So my parents, right? My dad retired at 61 and died at 61.
Yeah, poor guy.
But my mom, she retired at 66, and so she's still living. She's 67.
Yeah.
But the next couple generations, they could retire at 65 and live to 100, 110, 120. So the longer, as we're going out here, the life expectancy tables, depending on where you look, are increasing dramatically, which is a good thing.
Yeah, it's a great thing. And hopefully, Joe, the quality of life is still there because no one wants to live without the quality of life.
Exactly. So then there was a survey that was done by, I think, Allianz Life Insurance. And then they said, all right, well, what are people's reactions to this? Are they excited or are they fearful? And what do you think most people were?
Joe, I'm going to say fearful because everyone can think of maybe a grandparent that made it to 80 and their life they didn't have a lot of quality of life at that point.
Or I think a lot of people are fearful because they don't think they have enough money to maintain a lifestyle through age 100
That's
or
true
105.
Because you think about if they actually did any planning, it was probably to about 80 years old, and now they're hearing, I might live to 90, 95, 100 or more.
And I think those generations in past, a lot of them had pensions.
Right.
And Social Security.
Yeah, so it didn't matter as much because those checks kept coming in.
Exactly.
Now you got your own money. It's a fixed source.
Right. So then now you take a look at this and say, all right, well, now I'm going to retire at 65. I look at my 401k balance and what is my Social Security going to look like? And then that's it. So I got to make this thing work. And this is where planning for retirement income is so different than planning for retirement. Both are very difficult to do because I know it's difficult to save because you got kids that you're putting through school, you still got a mortgage, and you still have your daily living expenses. And it's always hard, to find a couple of extra bucks to save for your retirement. Then you look at retiring. And then now you got to sell the assets that you saved. And that is such a different way of looking at things because savers do not like to spend. They don't necessarily know how to spend because they have anxiety when it comes to tapping into their overall assets.
We've also found out that spenders don't like to save.
Yeah, it's true. So where's that happy medium?
I don't know.
Where are they? So when you look at spending money in retirement, you have to take a look at a lot of different factors and risks. And one of them is healthcare, right? How much money are you going to set aside for healthcare? How much money do you think is, I mean, if you're healthy, that's great, but life happens all the time. And so you have to make sure that you have some capital to make sure that you take care of that. But then then you have to take a look at longevity risk, which we just talked about. So we're living a lot longer. Then you have to take a look at tax risk. Right? So how much money are you going to be paying in tax on the distributions from your overall accounts? You have to take a look at what is called sequence of return risk, which I think is the most damaging. Because when markets go down and you're taking dollars from the overall portfolio, and if you don't have a retirement income strategy, it's very, very difficult to get caught back up, right? So, for instance, if you have $100,000 and you lose 30% of it, and then the next year you gain 30%, I think a lot of people will say, well, I lost 30, but I gained 30. I should have my money back. Well, the math doesn't work that way. Because if you got $100,000, you lose 30, you got $70,000. 30% on 70,000 is $21,000.
So you're at 91,000.
You're at 91,000.
You're not there yet.
Yeah, and if you're taking, $4,000, $5,000 out of that $100,000 per year to live off of, right? 4% distribution rule. All right, well, now it's going to be even that much more difficult to get you to square one. So having an income strategy is key. In looking at all these potential risks that are in front of you, as long as you can identify the risk, right? Then you can plan for it.
Yeah, I think, Joe, that's the key because I think the biggest issue that we're seeing for retirees is things that are unexpected. And there are a lot of unexpected things that can come up in retirement. And we touched on healthcare right off the bat. And for some reason, healthcare has a much higher inflation rate than other goods and services. In fact, it's been in the 5% range per year for a number of years. And as you said last segment, Joe, the Fidelity Investments does a study each year where they try to help predict the amount of out-of-pocket medical costs that a 65-year-old couple will have for the rest of their life. In their latest study, it was about $250,000. And that's, you're thinking, well, wait a minute. By the time I get to 65, Medicare, doesn't that cover everything? And the answer is no. And we're going to talk to Dr. Katy here pretty soon about that. But $250,000 is the estimate for out-of-pocket medical costs, and that doesn't even include long-term care. So you have to have a plan for that too.
Right. And when you think of long-term care, so if you have to go into a facility or your spouse has to go into a facility in Southern California, it's pretty pricey.
Yeah.
You're looking at over $100,000 a year.
I was going to say it'd be hard to get it under about $72,000, but that's kind of a national average. Southern California is more expensive.
Right. And then depending on where you want to stay, where you want to,
right.
be. We'll be right back. Show's called Your Money, Your Wealth.
Now back to Your Money, Your Wealth on Talk Radio 760 KFMB.
Hey, welcome back to the show. Show's called Your Money, Your Wealth. Joe Anderson here, certified financial planner alongside Alan Clopine. He's a CPA. Thanks for tuning in. We got a special guest right now, Dr. Katy Votava. Dr. Katy and I are doing a webinar in regards to Medicare, the ABCs of Medicare. And Dr. Katy, thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome, Joe. Thanks so much for having me.
Hey, well, let's talk a little bit about this webinar we're doing because what you have found is that a lot of times people will overpay for Medicare or there's money being lost and slipped through the cracks here that could be avoided.
Oh, absolutely. And it's surprising to people. National studies have shown that 90 to 95% of people overspend on Medicare. And if they knew more, they would be able to make better choices, save their money, and make their coverage go further, and that's what we're going to talk about.
What do you think, let's go high level here. What are the biggest mistakes that people are doing when it comes to just Medicare in general?
Sure. The biggest mistakes fall into a couple of categories, two categories, really. One is people don't know when to enroll and when they don't have to. You need to get in at certain times. There are windows to get in, and if you don't, when you need to, then you will have lapses and gaps in coverage and penalties down the road. So people need to understand their particular circumstance, and it's quite individual. So enrollment periods are really key. The other thing is people need to know how to select their coverage because it varies down to the county and zip code level, and it varies for each person based on their health and their medications. And yet if we do a little homework, people really can get the best coverage for the best price for themselves.
You know, when it comes to Medicare premiums, it's based on this modified adjusted gross income number. And I think people get surprised on how that's actually calculated because Medicare kind of looks backwards at their income, correct?
Yes, that's absolutely right, is that the premium for anyone in Medicare, for the Medicare B, is based on the tax return from 2 years ago. And if you're above a certain threshold, you will pay more based on this modified adjusted gross income, and people will pay more for their prescription drug coverage. So that's why it's important to plan ahead, because it's 2 years ago for this year, and it'll always be 2 years in the past. So plan this year for what is going to be your base for 2 years from now.
So, and we're going to get into more of what those thresholds are and the dollar figures and everything else on the webinar that we're doing on Tuesday. But a good question for you. Let's say this year, and I'm going to be on Medicare in 2 years, and I make a large sum of money because I have a lump sum payment and, you know, maybe a golden handshake. And so I make $400,000 a year. But then thereafter, I'm probably only going to, you know, my retirement income would be $60,000, let's say. How is that? So my first year of Medicare in 2 years from now would be calculated on the $400,000 income, correct?
Yes. Social Security actually is the department of the government that looks at your tax return and decides what your Medicare premium will be. They always look 2 years in arrears. But if you've had major changes for certain specific circumstances, you are eligible for something called a reconsideration. And I always say it's important not to leave money on Medicare's table, because if you don't tell Social Security about your change in circumstance, they won't know. But if you meet the criteria, you can do your own reporting, and then most people are granted that lower premium during their current year, and it's not based on what their income was 2 years before.
So do they just do it once? And then it's like, okay, well, here's your premium, or do they look at it every 2 years?
They actually look at it when you first go into Medicare, and then they actually look at it every single year. But each year, they're looking 2 years in arrears. So this year, 2016, they're looking at 2014. Next year, for January 1, which is 2017, they're going to look at the 2015 and so on. So it's every year once you're into Medicare, but always looking back 2 years.
So it's making sure that you understand those thresholds, looking at doing some tax planning specifically to figure out, all right, well, what's going to count on the modified adjusted gross income number that's going to basically affect my overall Medicare premium 2 years from now.
Absolutely right. It's really important to plan ahead.
And then there's some changes coming up, too, in 2018 with increases in premiums and also like different thresholds, correct?
Yes. One of the things that's going to happen in 2018 is that these thresholds for paying more for Medicare premiums and more surcharges are going to change, meaning that more people will pay higher premiums sooner than they even do now. And that means in 2018, they will be looking at this year's tax return, 2016. So it's really important for people to listen in to our webinar because they'll have the information and then be able to move forward to make their choices with informed decisions.
Hey, at what age do you think people should start thinking about planning for Medicare?
Oh, I think people should plan. A good time to start planning for your Medicare is when you're 62, because if you get Medicare at 65, and Medicare starts at 65, it's not 66 like full retirement age. Medicare starts at 65. It was based on your tax return when you're 63. So it's really good idea to start planning at least by the time you're 62. And then really focus in when you're 64, because you have to make big choices when you become 65. And it takes a little time to work through the details and get the background information. And so if you focus when you're 64, do I have to go into Medicare? Don't I? Or maybe I need some pieces, but not all of them. So that's my general recommendation.
I've got a question about signing up for Medicare. Why are there penalties if you don't sign up in time?
Well, typical in any insurance is that you can't just sign up the day you need it, that you have to go in during enrollment period. We are used to that in our employment, that we get health insurance during an annual enrollment period, and if we don't take it then, we have to wait another year. So it's a classic old-fashioned insurance concept. And so we have a window of opportunity to get into Medicare when we turn 65 for most of us, some people younger due to disability. And we have exceptions where we don't have to if we have alternative insurance that meets criteria. And so it's important to understand what these rules are and make sure you can get the insurance you need when you're eligible and then not pay too much down the road and have penalties.
But that penalty doesn't last for a year. That lasts for the rest of your life, right?
Those Medicare penalties absolutely last for the rest of your life. You pay them every month, and if you're a couple, most times if it's a couple, both people are in the penalty position, and two people are paying penalties. And that's a real waste of money. If you plan ahead, I mean, certainly you can avoid it. And beyond the money that is wasted, when people are in a penalty position, they're very stressed about it. And who needs that in retirement? That's not what you work so hard for.
So you just real quickly before we got to go to the break, is that we have the ABCs of Medicare. So Medicare Part A is hospital care. And so people paid for Medicare Part A through their payroll taxes. Medicare Part B would be the doctors, and then that's where the premium comes in, correct?
That's where one of the big premiums comes in, yes. Mm-hmm.
And then you got Medicare Part D, as in dog, that's prescription drugs. But then there's Medicare Part C. So Medicare Part C, what's the difference between Medicare Part C and then Medigap? I mean, there's so many different things that you got to look at here.
Oh, absolutely right. Medicare Part C is kind of a misnomer. It's not a separate part of Medicare. It's a way to wrap the three main parts, A, B, and D, together into a plan much like an HMO or a PPO plan that you may be used to. The premiums are lower, but you have higher co-payments and there are networks involved. But it does work as what people talk about as a supplemental. And for some people, if your care providers are in the network and your medications are covered, it could be cost effective. The difference is a Medigap plan is also a supplemental, but it works differently. There are no networks. You can go to any hospital, any doctor that accepts Medicare, which is 98% of all doctors in the United States. But the premiums are higher on a monthly basis, but your out-of-pocket costs, if you pick the right plan, we're going to talk about how to do that, can be lower in the not-so-long run for people who have higher health care costs or more specialized health care needs.
We're talking to Dr. Katy. Join Dr. Katy and I. We're doing a webinar, the soup to nuts, in regards to everything that you need to know. We're going to spend an hour together, and it's coming up this Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. to 11:30. All you got to do is go to purefinancial.com to register for the webinar. Or if you want to give us a call, you can do that too at 888-994-6257. All right. Hey, I know you're a busy lady, and I appreciate your time today. Hopefully you enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we will talk to you on Tuesday.
Okay, Joe. Thanks so much. Looking forward to it.
All right. That's Dr. Katy. Hey, Dr. Katy, where can people go right now to get more information?
They can go to several places that we have listed on our website, goodcare.com. That there's a variety of places that people can find information that's actually free and very helpful for Medicare, but our website, goodcare.com, is a good place to start.
Absolutely. Everyone go to goodcare.com, goodcare.com. All right, Dr. Katy, thanks. We'll talk to you Tuesday. We got to take a break. Show's called Your Money or Wealth.
Now back to Your Money, Your Wealth on Talk Radio 760 KFMB.
Hey, welcome back to the show. Show's called Your Money or Wealth. Joe Anderson, Big Al, hanging out here on a Saturday. Hopefully you're enjoying your weekend. Just got off the phone with Dr. Katy Votava. She's in New York.
Yeah, and so, I mean...
Broke her hip replacement.
Oh, I didn't know that, really?
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah.
She sounded good, though.
Great.
Yeah.
She plays hurt.
Yeah, she knows her stuff, doesn't she?
Oh, I mean, certainly
Medicare,
does.
let's be honest. It seems like that should be pretty simple, but it's not.
You got Medicare Part A, Part B,
Part
D, then C is encompassing.
Is inclusive.
It's like a PPO.
Yeah. And then there's Medicare Gap, and you could sign up in this circumstance. You got to do it by 65, but if you're still working on a certain kind of insurance policy, you don't have to. And if you don't sign up when you're supposed to, you get penalized, and that penalty lasts your entire life.
Right, and if you make more money than 1 year, 2 years ago, then all of a sudden you get a huge increase in your Medicare premium?
Yeah, because Medicare premiums, probably contrary to belief or normal belief, is that it's based upon your income level because different people pay different amounts to Medicare. So, like, let's say if you had as we were talking about, if you have a high income year, 2 years before Medicare starts, you're going to be probably at the maximum premium level. And the following year, you might have a lot lower amount because maybe you're retired. right? So it's, but what she said was really interesting, which is if you had a kind of a one-time event, you can request a change. In other words, that they shouldn't necessarily base it on that one unusual year. And very often, it's actually the Social Security Administration that will figure that out and grant you a lower Medicare premium.
So when you're looking at Medicare premiums too, they look at modified adjusted gross income. So they take a look at the AGI, and there's just one add back, and it's a municipal bond interest.
Right.
And some of the things that they don't look at is one of our favorite tools is the Roth IRA. And so if you've listened to the show for any period of time, you know Al and I are big fans of tax-free income. And so this is just another reason why looking at doing Roth IRA conversions, maxing out Roth plans, and making sure that you have that tax diversification when it comes to your retirement income strategy is so important, because it's like, all right, well, here now I'm saving money on tax, but you're also potentially could be saving money on Medicare premiums. And if you think the Social Security Administration, when it comes to how much the funding is, because what is it, 2037, 2034, the retirement trust fund, the OASDI fund is exhausted. The Social Security retirement fund is a little bit stronger, a lot stronger than Medicare. And so they've already trying to, like the net investment income tax, the 3.8% tax that you have on capital gains if you have a modified adjusted gross income over 200 if you're single or 250 if you're married, right? That additional 3.8% tax, plus the payroll tax went up for certain income payers.
Yeah, same income levels for salaries. There's an extra 0.9% you got to pay.
So they're looking for any way possible to try to get more money into Medicare because 10,000 baby boomers are turning 65, right? Every day for what? A long time,
Yes.
13 years.
Correct.
Every day for the next 13 years. So they understand, hey, we need some funding here. And how are they going to fund it? By tax and premiums. So you just want to make sure that you're truly aware of what the tax is going to be when it comes to your overall investments, right? The additional taxes. But then on the flip side, well, what's the additional premiums going to be? Because premiums could get as high as close to $15,000 a year.
Yeah, and
for a
Joe,
couple.
In some cases, and typically,
And that's just Medicare premiums,
Right.
not including co-pays, not including everything else that you're trying to do.
Yeah, and typically those prepayments, or those premiums, I should say, are deducted from your Social Security benefit. And we're starting to see cases where there's not even enough Social Security income to cover the premiums. But you still have to pay tax on the Social Security income. It's crazy how this all works.
So, like I said, we have a webinar coming up Tuesday. You can go to purefinancial.com to register for the webinar. Purefinancial.com, I think /webinar is the landing page. Purefinancial.com or Medicare. Just go to the website. You'll figure it out. Right?
Yeah, instead of trying to explain it.
Yeah. So taxes, again, Alan, I mean, with some of the planning that we've done over the last 10 years with some individuals, or especially our listeners, hopefully, because we get emails from people all over the place and saying, hey, you know what, we have this much money now in our Roth IRAs. Thanks so much. We've been listening to you for the last 5, 6, 7 years.
Right.
And we haven't got a complaint yet of saying, you know what, dang it, I have so much money in this Roth.
I shouldn't have done it.
I shouldn't have done it. It stinks.
Well, and Joe, that's a good point, because we're talking in this first hour about unexpected expenses, and taxes are one of them. And a lot of people are pretty surprised how much they got to pay in taxes in retirement, because all of their IRA money, their 401k money, for the most part, is taxable as ordinary income. And then in some cases, people have pensions. That's ordinary income. In other cases, people have what are called non-qualified or non-retirement assets, and they have them invested in vehicles that are generating ordinary income type of income. And then you got with those IRAs, 401ks at 70 and a half, you have to take a required minimum distribution. And what we're seeing is a number of people, their income that they have to take out of these IRAs, 401ks is greater than their spending, and so their taxes all of a sudden go way up. Now, that one of the solutions to that, of course, is to start taking some of your IRA 401k money and start converting it to a Roth IRA, and you're allowed to do that. 2010, they took the income limitations away, so anyone listening that has an IRA 401k can convert. Now, then the question is, should you convert? And the answer to that is you want to take a look at your tax brackets now versus later. But the truth is, a lot more people should be converting than you might think. And the reason for that is when you look at your future tax brackets in retirement, in many cases it's higher than you think because of the income that you're going to be receiving if you've saved money in these retirement accounts, for number one. Number two is when you do a Roth conversion, conversion, you have the ability to undo it all the way up to the tax filing date of the following year. So in many cases, we're seeing people converting and investing in an investment, and if the investment does really rather well, then they go ahead and keep it in the Roth, and regardless of their extra tax they pay, because all that extra growth is now going to be tax-free forever. And if it doesn't grow enough, they put it back into the IRA as if it never happened. You're allowed to do that.
And let me just clarify a couple of things here, too. We're not suggesting that you add more risk to your overall portfolio and speculate with a certain investment in a Roth. I know a lot of you may do that. What we're suggesting is this, is that when you take a look at a globally diversified portfolio, and you will have money in small companies, you will have money in large companies, you will have money in value companies, you will have money in international companies, in emerging markets, you'll have money in real estate, you'll have money in commodities. And so you take a look at all of those different asset classes, right? And then you take a look and say, all right, well, which of those asset classes historically will give me the highest expected return? And if you take a look at history, small value type companies will probably give you one of the highest expected returns because there's a lot of risk. I mean, you got low priced small companies. Those are fairly risky companies. Because of the risk associated with those types of companies, right, you should anticipate the highest expected return. Emerging markets is another asset class that is extremely volatile. But over time, it has performed quite well. Larry Swedrow was on last week, and he was quizzing me. And he was asking me, he was like, yeah, from 2002 to 2007, what did emerging markets do? You're a smart guy. Oh my God.
You didn't have the table in front of you.
Yeah, and I guessed because I knew over that 10-year time period, right, 2000 through 2010, that emerging markets were up over 200%.
Yeah, it was actually for that whole decade, it was one of the best performing asset classes.
And it was up like over 500 and some odd percent.
In that period?
In that period, in a few short years.
Yeah.
And so, all right, so what Alan and I are suggesting is that you take certain asset classes, even if you're in a high tax bracket, that you're already going to hold anyway in your portfolio, and just isolate those into a Roth, and if they perform and you get a large rate of return, who cares what the tax is, because all of that additional growth, depending on whatever rate of return that is acceptable to you.
And emerging markets, that's an example of an asset class that certainly can go down a lot, but it can go up 50% or more in a single year. So it is a great strategy. Getting money into Roth IRAs, because taxes don't stop when your paycheck does. In fact, Joe, when you start tapping your retirement nest egg, it comes with all sorts of new rules and opportunities. Instead of contributing to tax-deferred plans that reduce your taxes, you'll start tapping those savings for income and paying taxes at your regular rates, unless you're tapping into a Roth IRA.
We'll be right back. Show's called Your Money, Your Wealth.